Hi guys, welcome back to another episode on Rancor Reptiles. Today I'm going to be talking about saving us some money. Things you can do to basically save a couple cents here and there. In the long run, it will make a big difference. Now I wanted to put in front of this video a big disclaimer basically saying that there's certain animals that require certain care you can't cheap out on. You can't skimp out and cut corners on some of this care. So make sure that some of the things I say applies to the animal you're looking at getting or have, to make sure that that animal's health is not impacted, right? So right off the bat, how can I save some money? Let's say you want to get something like a leopard gecko or a ball python, corn snake, king snake, anything like that. Any of the popular reptiles in the market. You can, first off, buy them from a breeder. You can go to a reptile expo, or maybe find somebody locally through Craigslist or something like that, and buy straight from the breeder themselves. Because you're buying straight from the source, oftentimes these animals come out at a pretty nice discount compared to big blockchain stores like Petco and PetSmart. Now, because you are buying from a breeder, luckily, if you ask for their contact information, they will be available to you as a first fountain of information you can draw on. A lot of times you go through the internet and you're searching up certain information on care. These breeders will be able to provide you that information, basically a one-stop shop for anything you need to know or in case of an emergency, right? The second way you can save money up front on an animal is through adopting. There's a lot of leopard geckos, ball pythons, king snakes, corn snakes, you name it. Any of the popular animals, they're so popular, and because of that, there's a lot of times where people have to give them up for whatever reason, and they are sent to rescues. Now these rescues will offer they will only ask for an adoption fee, so they're much cheaper. If you're not a breeder and you're just looking to get a pet reptile, they're a great source you can get one from, and you're going to be doing a lot of good to the animal. Like I said, because you're just adopting, it's not really, if you're looking to breed something like fancy ball python morphs, that might not be a good source for you. However, if you're just looking for a nice reptile pet, it's a great option. And like I said, you'll be doing good on an animal and be a positive impact on their life, right? The second place you can save money is on the animal's enclosure. Now, certain animals require certain things in their enclosure, and it's important to meet those parameters. Like maybe if you got a semi-aquatic animal, you need to have a water feature, things like that. However, a lot of times on YouTube, these enclosures are presented really nicely. They're all bioactive, exoterras, and they look wonderful. They are show quality things, right? However, you really don't need to have that. As long as all the parameters are met in a safe way, there's no real reason to, say, for example, not put an animal in a plastic bin. As long as the bin is retrofitted with proper heat, ventilation, and all that good stuff, there's no reason the animal wouldn't do as well in that bin than in an exoterra, right? I've seen quite a few examples of people breeding dart frogs that keep them in bins than people, with fancy exoterras. Now, it's nicer to have nice exoterras. However, maybe it's not possible for you simply because they cost too much, or maybe you're building that exoterra tank up. However, you just don't have the funds to complete it all out in just one big push. So you can get the animals first as long as you keep them properly in a plastic enclosure. A big caveat to that is the heating element to this enclosure, because the heating element, if it fails, can get too hot and melt through the plastic, potentially killing your animal or giving the animal a way to get out of their enclosure. So you got to make sure that whatever heating element you decide to put on these plastic enclosures, that they have a thermostat, they don't get too hot, and they don't burn through. That's why I believe if you do get a plastic enclosure, it's best bet to get a heat mat instead of a heat lamp. And and a thermostat to go along with that to make sure that things don't get too hot. That's exactly what I do with my 2 ball pythons up there. I of course have already ordered a rack system to make sure, because my ball pythons over here are getting a little too big for those bins, so they're gonna get a nice big rack. So you got to make sure that the heating element is not going to hurt your animal or provide an escape route. Second way you can save on enclosure is, like I said, getting a rack. Racks are pretty controversial because maybe a lot of people think if you're going to get an animal, why are you going to put them in a drawer? I don't think they're in a drawer, because I pull them out, I let them explore several times a week, and I go about things providing enrichment, stuff like that. I provide these animals a proper day and night cycle, all that good stuff. They're doing just fine. Ball pythons, I think, do really well in racks because the racks do a good job at keeping in humidity, keeping in heat, and for whatever reason, they just eat a lot better. Now, if you say, well, I want to look at my reptile, you can get an Exoterra and all that good stuff. However, because it's glass, a very shy ball python might not vibe with that type of enclosure. But yeah, you can get a rack system for ball pythons, leopard geckos. I know they have rack systems now for things like arboreal pythons too. You just got to make sure that if you do get a rack system, that you do properly provide those enclosures with proper amounts of enrichment. And lastly, the husbandry. Now, I'm going to focus mostly on the feeders and husbandry because there's a lot of equipment and stuff that you shouldn't really scamp out on. So feeders, I think, where the bulk of the cost can be cut simply by first breeding your own feeders. If you have enough space, you have enough patience, you can grow your own mealworms, dubia roaches. If you have enough space and equipment, maybe you can even produce your own rats, mice, stuff like that for your snakes. And this really drives down the cost of keeping these animals to almost nothing, because if you breed enough and you have a nice big surplus, you're able to put up ads and sell some of these feeders locally to your community. Obviously, they're not going to sell for a lot of money. However, you'll be able to cover the cost of maintaining your feeders, usually, right? The oatmeal and vegetables you need for these feeders to keep going, the price of selling them off usually covers, and you have enough to feed your own collection. So you're basically feeding your reptiles for zero cost, which is awesome. If you can't breed your own things, you can connect with a local feeder breeder that will probably give you much better prices than brick and mortar stores. I hooked up with a rat breeder nearby, and he provides me small to medium rats for around $2.50, which is a great price because at the store they'll cost me between $4 to $5. Basically almost cutting the cost in half. Because of that, I'm able to keep a larger collection. However, I'm going to control the size and I'm going to keep the cost down. So that really does help, save money in the long run. It makes keeping several animals much more affordable. So this has been all the ways you can really cut costs. Another great way would be to buy non-reptile branded equipment. I didn't really want to cover this too much because sometimes things need to be branded to make sure that the quality is set. For like thermostats, things like vitamins, calciums, basking bulbs, things like that are guaranteed a certain performance, certain result. Things like crested gecko diet, stuff like that needs to have a certain guarantee on it. Those type of things you really can't buy anywhere else. It's better to buy branded, that way the quality's there. However, for other things like water dishes, enclosure decor, enrichment, stuff like that, you're able to buy things from like the dollar store much cheaper and not having to buy branded all the time. Alright, well, that's been really all the ways you can really kind of save money with your reptile collection. Of course, there's ways to make money with your reptile collection. I'll probably cover that in another video. However, if maybe you don't have the funds, you can use some of these tips and tricks to, you know, lower the cost down a little bit. As always, thanks for coming by and listening to me and checking out the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.